Oh, hi, welcome to my podcast. If you're listening to this, you probably think you have PTSD or you know you have it. Some of us have been clinically told we have it, and others just suspect it. I want you to understand that it's dreadful. It's really hard to live with, and mostly it wasn't your fault. It's stuff that kind of happened externally to you. If you've got a really sensitive aura, it would have resounded in your aura as well and even done more damage, the trauma that you went through, than just a normal person. So I want you to be kind to yourself around this. When you suffer trauma, it usually gets stuck in your aura and it'll often get stuck in the different chakras. And the reason I'm doing this podcast is because I'm talking about the energy of having post traumatic stress disorder, and it has an energy around it, and that's what I want you to look at today with me. Trauma is stuck somewhere around the body. The main places to go to try and see if you can find out are the chakras. So often it will stick in the chakras. For example, I had from the sexual abuse, I had the trauma stuck in my bottom three chakras, and I've done work that released them. However, there was extra trauma that came after in my life with various other things, and then I actually had to go tracking for it, and I found that I had trauma in my solar plexus. I use my modalities. If you're listening to me regularly, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not, I'm just talking about using tapping or doing release modalities like meditation or breath work. Some people release it by going to therapists and talking to people as well, and you can also use hypnosis or self-hypnosis to get rid of it. I use the kinesiology to find out where it is. I find that a really good way for me to work out where it is, and that's what you can do. If you don't know which chakra the trauma is held in, I would just go to each chakra and let it go because it's actually trapped in the body. And some people feel that it's really good to do exercise too and move around. It helps to release it. These traumas get trapped and they get held there, and that's why you'll end up getting post traumatic stress. However, the actual post traumatic stress disorder is actually held in the mind. So even though the trauma is in the body, it's the mind reaction to the trauma. You just can't cope, really. And so that's where I want you to go and realize that you might have a lot of post traumatic stress in your actual mind. And the mind is like a big energy. It's not the brain, actually. The brain is part of the mind, but the mind is more expansive and it's bigger. So when you're going to try and release it and let it go, particularly with the tapping, go to the mind that you release the post traumatic stress from your mind, and then you release the trauma from your chakras. This kind of work is kind of ethereal, and you can't really put it on a piece of paper and show it to people. But I know through experience and with my double checks that it does work, that you can actually get rid of these things. And this is just another modality that you might want to use to try and get rid of your post traumatic stress. The other night, I was having trouble sleeping again, and I went in and I got in my head the thought that maybe it was that's still there and I hadn't got rid of it all. So yes, I went and checked, and oh yes, there it was. Huge amount of post-traumatic stress in my mind. So I did my tapping, and then I did a meditation to let it go. Then I did some breath work to let it go, and I did some self-hypnosis where I counted right down, and then we got to the subconscious and to the mind and let go of the post-traumatic stress, because it makes your life a misery and you feel like you're paralyzed mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, and that will affect your life dreadfully. It's something you can do, you can actually release it. And the reason people don't get over post traumatic stress is because the trauma is trapped and caught in the aura, and they keep walking around with it, and it causes stress. You cannot know where the trauma is kept because you'll have problems there. For example, with me, I've been having a lot of digestive problems, trouble eating for quite a few years now, and the trauma that was still left there that I hadn't actually realised was there was in my solar plexus where the digestion is. And so when I found it the other week, I was like kind of pleased. It's like, okay, there's still some here, and that's why I still have PTSD, because there's still some trauma in the body. I got rid of some of them, but there was still some residual. And that's the thing, you've got to understand that if you've suffered from a lot of trauma, perhaps you had traumatic childhood and then you had a traumatic partnership or marriage, then some other traumatic things happened to you, deaths of people and witnessing things, maybe some other traumas that you had to endure, there'll be more and more trauma held in the body, and so you're going to have to work a lot harder than just maybe someone who's got a little bit of trauma. It's also cumulative, it's how much you've got. So now I've tapped on and got rid of and released the stuff out of my solar plexus and my mind, and so I'm expecting in the next few days, weeks, months, that I start to feel better because I'm not carrying it around. And that's why I've done these podcasts, because this kind of work isn't done by many people. A lot of people use medication and counselling, professional counselling, and all these things are valid. However, energetically, it's still caught in your aura. And that's the problem you're going to have, that you need to get rid of that actual traumatic energy that's held there. Because the body remembers, and you have what I call cellular memory, and the body will remember stuff and it will lock it down, particularly trauma, that it locks it into the body. And in a way, it's disconnected, so your body and your mind become disconnected, so you can't really access it as easily. So that's why I'm doing the podcast today, because then I realised that the trauma was still there where it was, and then the trauma was post-traumatic stress disorder, like the stress, the post-traumatic stress was still in my mind. I was still had it in my mind, and that was what was affecting all the other parts of my life. I'm hoping that you can release and let these things go. If you're quite a spiritual person, you can ask your guides as well to help you let go of all the trauma. If you are a person of faith, you can ask God and or your God to send healing for it, to release it. You don't have to have it for the rest of your life. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Energetically, if you release it, and I usually put love in that area, lots of love in my mind and love in that, like for me, the solar plexus, then that will make a big difference for your healing, because you can't heal from something until you let it go, and particularly trauma. And trauma has a way of really lodging in the body, and it's almost like the mind tells us we're never going to go back there, we're never going to go back to that horrible place, and so we almost are in complete denial of it. There will always be physical problems in the area where the trauma is, always, because it locks in and then it creates disturbance in the energy field in that area, and you will actually have problems in those areas. So if you don't really know where it is, but you're having trouble with your hip, your knee, your shoulder, your neck, and it's not particularly exactly in the chakra that you expect, you can go to those places and do the release work. So I encourage you to release it from your mind, from the chakras, and then go to any parts of your body that you think could have been holding trauma and release it. Because we are really powerful. We can let things go, and we can tell our mind through hypnosis to let it go, and through tapping we can let it go, and meditation on a spiritual level, and ask for healing in that way. And then that way we are advantaging ourselves to release it. You might also think seriously about going to an energy worker, someone who does spiritual healing, someone who does Reiki, and they can help you release the energy. Sometimes it's good to have someone else's hands there. I always do healing on myself, and I encourage you always to do that. Put your hands out and do healing on yourself, Reiki on yourself. Put your hands where it hurts, and I encourage that. However, with some traumas, they are so severe and so locked in that we actually need that extra energy of another person as well. And so if you're guided or know someone who does this work, you go to them and you say, before you turn up to your guides, and can you help me with the healing, my guides? And when you get there, you say to the energy work or the Reiki person, I've got these blocks around my body, I want you to tune in to where they are, and I want to release them, and you want to let them go of the body. If you go to a good healer, they will be guided as well, and they will go to wherever in the body they feel the block is, and their energy is high, so they'll be able to knock it out. Because trauma energy would be low vibration. It's like dark and sticky, I think. So you need someone to actually pull it out and yank it out. You might get more memories, you might get more flashbacks, but just see that as the cleansing. They're just the things that are happening to remind you that you're clearing it out and you're healing from it. So I hope you get some benefit from this. I'm going to do an update on this in maybe a month about how it's been for me and what I figured out. I feel like it's a doable thing for us who have this post-traumatic stress, because I think I went back and checked, I probably had a little bit of it by the time I was 10, living in the household I lived in. I carried it my whole life, and for me to think of actually being able to get rid of all of it is kind of wonderful and liberating. So I'm hoping that you too, if you're listening to this, that you can get some help with this. So do all your other modalities, like use the doctor, the therapist. If you need meds, don't give any of those up. Use those and add this one in and see if you can get this one to knock it out. So I'm wishing you lots of good luck with this, and I'm sending you lots of love and healing, because there's not a lot of people walking around with this, but the people who are walking around with post-traumatic stress are really suffering. And we're suffering in that quiet, silent way. It just interferes with everything in your life, and you never really feel that great. It's not a good feeling, and it's like walking around with a huge big shadow over you all the time, regardless of what's happening in your life, good or bad. So I'm hoping you can also find more happiness and more calm and more peace and more joy. Let me know if you can. I'm on Facebook as well under Spiritual and Energy Work with Wendy, and I'm on YouTube with that same one, Spiritual and Energy Work with Wendy. If you're on SoundCloud, that's where I am. So good luck. I really wish you good luck, and I hope you have some success with this. Because God, we need to feel better, don't we?